think it's important to look after the environment because God gave it to us to look after. In Genesis 1, verse 28, it says, "Then God blessed them and said, 'Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground.'"
Hi, I'm Jez.
Hi, I'm Lydia.
People need to look after the environment because it is being destroyed by humankind.
God created the world, so it's important that we look after it.
We need to protect the environment, and there are loads of things we can do.
As a family, we recycle things and we reuse things. For example, bottles, bags, boxes and clothes.
We have solar panels, turn off lights, and walk instead of driving when possible.
I think looking after our environment is important because God made this world and He made us to look after it. He entrusted us with the care of it, and so we then need to be responsible by doing what He asked. What we do affects others across the globe, so reducing climate change is being kind.
As our children have just explained so well, it is really important that we look after the world that God has given us. And I am so pleased that ChristCentral has started a new initiative called CreationCall to help us as churches to respond to the climate crisis. It is important to take action for a number of different reasons, one of which is the effect of climate change on people's lives. I'm really pleased that we have Martin Charlesworth here with us today to guide us through why climate change is a social justice issue.
Hello, I'm so pleased to talk to you today about climate justice in the context of this CreationCall initiative within ChristCentral, which I'm a great supporter of. And climate justice is something that you'll be familiar with. It's a relatively new concept. The concept that things happening in the climate are affecting people's lives in a way that amounts to a social justice issue. In order to address this issue from a Christian point of view, we need to link together three things. We've got to look at the Bible, we've got to look at the science, and then we've got to look at the social justice implications. And when we link those three things together, we can get a clear picture of how we can proceed as Christians in this area alongside people with secular views and other faiths. So from our point of view, the Bible roots our concern for the environment in the creation, really, because God made the world good. So the material world has a goodness about it, which we have to affirm as Christians. It's valuable. The environment is valuable. The physical aspects of it are the way that God made it. That's a fundamental insight. But alongside that, of course, we've got the basic reality that mankind was given the responsibility back in Genesis 1 verses 26 to 28 in the image of God to be the representative of God, to steward, to look after, to develop, to shape the environment. And that reality hasn't changed throughout the centuries and the different eras of biblical history. And that mandate sort of falls back onto Christians. We have a really vivid view of that mandate as disciples of Jesus Christ. Here we are living in a world that's broken in many ways. The environment is under pressure. Sustainability is under question. And we as disciples should be focused on caring for the environment. So that's our starting point, biblically. Now, when we look at the scientific situation, we've now reached a position after a number of decades of very intensive work by the scientific community on analysing our climate, where the broad consensus of scientists is very clear. And that is that the climate is changing primarily because of human activity. This has taken place largely since the Industrial Revolution, very much focused in the 20th century. The industrialized processes And the use of fossil fuels have created what we now call greenhouse gases, notably carbon dioxide, but a number of other gases too, in such large quantities that they're affecting the radiation of the sun and how much of the sun's heat is trapped within the atmosphere and how much of it returns out to space. It's known as the greenhouse effect, and you'll be familiar with it. We've passed the point now of fundamental climate skepticism on a scientific basis. The consensus amongst scientists is clear. As the Earth warms up, there are changes taking place in the environment which basically have significant impacts on all of life. And you'll be familiar with many of these: the warming of the seas, the melting of the ice, the expansion of the seas, sea levels rising, and a number of other things. But for our purposes, the most fundamental change that we're seeing in our climate is the intensification of the rainfall cycle. Now, obviously, rain and lack of rain and dry periods vary in weather patterns around the world. Weather always varies. Climate's a discussion of long-term weather. It's not a discussion of short-term variations. Climate is the trends over a long period of time. But the climate is changing around the world in the sense that rainfall is becoming more intense, heavier, more extreme in many places. And at the same time, dryness, arid conditions and drought are also becoming more extreme. Now, these we see in our own climate in the UK. We can manage it in a temperate country relatively well currently. It's inconvenient and difficult, but it doesn't fundamentally change our lives at present. However, this change in the rainfall cycle, this intensification, is much more intense in tropical areas, hotter climates. Now, the significance of this is that as these monsoons, heavy rain, flooding, storms, as well as droughts and arid conditions and expansion of the deserts, as these things go on in these poorer countries, there's an interreaction with social justice, because those poorer countries are where most of the poverty in the world is located. These tropical countries are, many of them, poorer countries: sub-Saharan Africa, Central and Latin America, parts of Asia. And so poverty and climate change are closely related. And the changing conditions in the atmosphere are affecting people disproportionately in those areas. I've travelled to many such places and find that there is great unreliability of the rainfall cycle, which is affecting agriculture. People are very concerned about flooding. They're very concerned about drought conditions very often. And so these things are having a really major impact in this area. There are other things that happen that we also need to think about. There's biodiversity loss that happens through climate change and this cycle, this rainfall cycle changing. The sea levels rising affects coastal areas with storm surges and flooding, and some island areas. But there are also public health implications of climate change, because we see infectious diseases on the rise in some places. We see the risk of malnutrition, of diarrhea, which become very, very dangerous public health issues in some countries. And it's predicted that in the future, not so distant future, we'll see significant migration from poorer countries to other countries or different parts of their countries, what we're going to call climate migration. Now, this will have a very, very destabilizing effect on the economic structure and social structure of the whole world if this happens in large numbers. And this would happen because people can no longer use their land. They can no longer rely on agricultural production or water supply. So the predictions are very significant. And if things continue with this gradual warming going on, of the Earth's atmosphere, then it's predicted that these things will intensify, causing very significant social pressures and social justice issues and poverty and human need, especially in these poorer parts of the world. Now, when you add all that up, a biblical perspective, a scientific perspective, an awareness of the geographical areas where this is most severely felt, we realize there's a social justice issue that really matters. Now, it so happens that in many of these poorer countries, we have some of the strongest church movements in sub-Saharan Africa and in Latin America and parts of Asia. The church is often thriving or growing or vigorous even in hard conditions in such countries. And we have brothers and sisters, countless numbers of them, whose very daily lives are now being affected by climate change. So in conclusion, with all this perspective in mind, what can we do? Well, this CreationCall initiative will highlight resources to you. You can look at Chapter 7 of A Call to Act, a book I co-authored and was published in 2020, which describes this in detail. But in a nutshell, we can reflect on and perhaps change our own lifestyles. We can think about our church culture and how that might change in order to reduce our carbon emissions and also to reduce pollution and other negative effects in the environment, which we haven't focused on so particularly here because we're talking about the climate. We can engage with other groups in our local community who are interested in environmentalism. This is a great opportunity for witness and partnership. And we can also engage politically with national and international politics. There's a few more things coming in this video that are practical things that our churches are doing. And that's another way that we can get involved. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you. And I trust this CreationCall initiative will energize our churches in a wonderful way to address environmental issues. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Austin. I serve on ChristCentral Zambia core team led by Joseph Mwira. I want to talk about climate change in Zambia, particularly in Charlesworth, which is situated 80 kilometers west of Livingstone towards Namibia. This area has been affected by the drought in the past years, but because of climate change, we have experienced a lot of floodings in the area. But because of the landscape, most of the water seeps away, and so the drought still affects the area. This has been a telling effect on the community. There's been a change in the land use. Because of the flooding, people are no longer able to farm where they were farming previously, and they moved to higher ground, and some have even started charcoal burning on a commercial basis to sustain their families. Some people have also migrated to the Zambezi during the dry season so that their animals are able to get clean drinking water, and families are remaining, and this has impacted on the way of livelihood for the most families. Some have migrated into towns so that they can get employment, and also because of the climate change, getting to the health facilities has been a challenge, especially during the rain season, where because of the floodings, people are unable to move through the floods and the streams. Even children are unable to go to school, and so this has affected the cultures of the people in the area. Has been deeply affected. The livestock has been affected, especially in the production that now people have even resorted to using donkeys, affecting even the way of producing because of not using the horse carts. Creating clean drinking water both in the rain season and dry season has been a big challenge. The church, ChristCentral, in partnership with Pray Trust, we have not just remained idle. We've taken a step. We've provided food relief in the past years. for the month of December to April, and 154 households had been given 150 kg bag of meal every month for those months. We've trained 55 households, supplying them with farming inputs as foundation for farming with the help from Bread Trust. A bore has also been dug in the area, which is supplying clean drinking water for the community and for the animals. We also plans are on the ground to set a garden and a chicken rearing in the same area where the borehole is. And so the market will be provided for the chickens and for the garden. Other mitigation measures that could be done is maybe doing some dams to capture the water that is coming through, tree planting to mitigate for the main trees that are being cut for charcoal, and also beekeeping. So there's still potential to help this area in the light of the climate change. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Nick Priggis. I'm a church pastor in Shrewsbury, and I'm also a trustee of an organisation called Bread Trust. Bread Trust exists to support churches reach out to the most poor in their communities. We've been working with churches in partnership for more than 20 years into Ukraine, and more recently from 2017 with Joseph Mwila and Austin Hamunkolo in Zambia. The focus of our partnership in Zambia has been because of the climate change issue facing that nation, and especially in the southern area of that nation. We've been working with Austin particularly as he has cascaded and trained hundreds of farmers in the Foundations for Farming biblical methodology for capturing and harnessing God's provision through natural resources. He's done a fantastic job. But the issue of climate change is accelerating. The problems caused by the changing climate has caused livelihoods for the poorest to be decimated. And so more recently, through funding, through ChristCentral, we have helped and supported the drilling of a borehole in Scounsway in Southern Province. And that's resulted in the provision of fresh water, which has been accessible to people, especially during the dry season, for drinking, for animals, but also for vegetable production. As well as doing Foundations for Farming and supporting our partners in Zambia, our vision is threefold. Firstly, to extend the work of Foundations for Farming. It's so important, and it's proved to be so successful for those who have persevered with this zero ploughing discipleship model. But it's not enough, because we need also to provide support to small-scale farmers in rural areas and generating income. And so, along with our partners in Zambia, we are proposing to help fund chicken rearing and vegetable production. We're going to be starting this in Scounsway, where there's already been a borehole that's been drilled, and that will release a market and income that will support tens of families, hundreds of families in that area. Secondly, we're going to extend Foundations for Farming further. This method has been so popular and so successful, it needs to go further. And thirdly, we're going to help support a centre of excellence where pastors can come and learn Foundations for Farming on site, that they can learn chicken rearing, that they can learn beekeeping, they can learn other initiatives, income generating projects, where they then can go to rural areas and plant churches, knowing that their income and that their livelihood is going to be secured by what they've learnt. So I'd like to encourage you within ChristCentral to see this as a response, one of many perhaps, but a response towards the massive issues of climate change that we face. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karen Hill. I'm part of the Ark Church in Huddersfield and part of the CreationCall core team. Thank you for joining us for our special devoted CreationCall video. Hope you've enjoyed this compilation and now feel inspired to be involved. We are here to encourage, equip and resource you and your church. One of the joys of Christ Central is our diversity. Every church is a bit different, and we want to resource churches to respond in ways that are suitable for their own individual circumstances. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but it is about each one of us taking a moment to consider the impact our lives have on the planet, and ultimately all who live here. And it's about bringing God's peace to every aspect of our lives. Back in May, we held our climate leadership training programme with our friends in Tier Fund. This was a brilliant mini-series of teaching and discussions, and we hope to run it again in the near future. Our webpage within the Christ Central website is now live, as is our Facebook page. And these will hopefully point you to some great resources, showcase how other churches are responding, and allow you to get in touch with the team. We'd love to hear from you. CreationCall seeks to support you in your Christian walk, to consider your environmental impact in everything you do and how you live your life. Our care for God's earth can be a natural part of our daily worship and our walk with Him. And our team is here to help you. Maybe you want to run an environmental awareness day in your church. Maybe you want to ask some scientific questions. Get some practical hints, or maybe just some help getting started. Whatever you need, we're here to help. Martin Luther King said, "Before you finish eating breakfast, you've depended on half the world." Who grew your tea leaves? Or your coffee beans? Where does your fruit grow? What about the cereal or chocolate in your pain au chocolat? These foods are often grown in developing countries where the effects of climate change are already being seen, and often catastrophically. Let's be wise stewards and good neighbours, using our global interactions to bring positive change to our planet. After all, it's not our earth, it's God's earth. It's God's creation, and we are His people. On the 2nd of October, we will be hosting a mini conference, so just in a few weeks' time, with ideas and resources for churches to get involved. We'll all be online, so why not gather a group of friends from your church and meet together. More details will be on the website, so we hope to see you then.